Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Jim, have you managed to call in? Are you going to be joining us today? No. All right. Well, give him another 60 seconds or so.
Did he post a location?
Yep. Good. Shoot him a text. All right, well, hopefully he will join us shortly, but let's kick this off because we have a lot of things to cover today. So call to order for this regular board meeting of Board of Directors Mojave and Spaceport for 7 June. Scott, would you kindly lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today?
Ready, begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, roll call. Director Coleman.
Here.
Director Morgan.
Here.
Director Barney is here. Do we have Director Ballantyne on the horn? All right, not yet, but hopefully soon. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve. Second.
And a second. All right, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? No opposed. Motion passes. Community announcements. Now is a chance for members of the community if they have something to say. Grace, you look like you're champing at the bit. I'm going to ask you for more detail, but...
Yeah, of course. Sorry, I thought I had to wait till the end. And actually, if you can stand up at the podium and turn on the mic so that it goes on Zoom.
Testing?
Yep.
Cool. Hey everybody, my name is Grace Wang. I live in Mojave. I own Hangar 958. I administer the Mojave Hangar Association. So we've got a group of about 20 hangars and 21 people on this insurance, and it covers liability. And recently the insurance carrier called me with some bad news, and so I wanted to see if we have options, see if you guys have any ideas to help. So some of the people on our insurance are hangar owners and some are renters. And now the insurance company won't cover the renters. So they're going to have to find supplemental coverage either through their aircraft insurance or some other options. I don't know. I got to talk to Lynn and ask her how all the other tenants handle it, because I think some of the other tenants do have arrangements figured out. So that's a change with the Hangar Insurance Association. But then a bigger question, I think, is more like, hey, is there a structural change we should be making with how the insurance works with the airport? Would it make more sense if the airport buys insurance and then charges all the tenants? And has that been tried in the past? Has it not worked? Like, is there a reason that we should be doing what we're doing right now? That's the premise of my question, why I'm here. I'm kind of in a pickle, so I'll have to tell all the members, you got to go figure out your own insurance, but I wanted to bring it up to you guys, see if you have input before I tell them, like, sorry, you're on your own, figure it out.
So, Grace, thank you very much for the preview, and I know you got to go first, but if I could ask you to stick around through at least action item B, and I promise we'll get there pretty quick. Yes, thank you for bringing up this extra dimension, which the staff and the board may not have been anticipating. We knew we were going to discuss insurance, but this is another aspect that we're going to have to chew on.
Yeah, I only found out about it a few days ago, so we're still, like, trying to figure out what to do.
I have some questions for you, Grace.
Yeah.
Do you know how many of the 21 members are owners versus renters?
I don't yet, so I can ask Lynn, or I can like send out an email to my to all of the association members and ask, but I haven't yet.
And I guess the concern is besides the convenience of having the collective, the rates may go up because we're not as big a group bargaining.
Yeah, so how it works is it's a premium for the group, and at the beginning of the insurance year, they reassess with the number of people that we have, and then we agree, and then it's split evenly among all the members per hangar. And if we add people during the year, then it's money in the kitty for the next year. So then they reassess us then. And the changes in membership have been pretty small, like on the order of a couple people per year. So I asked the carrier if we have like half the number of people for next year, if it'll be like half the premium, will we actually get a decrease, or will it be kind of the same amount split among half the people? So it'll be double the premium. She says she thinks it would go down, but I mean, we won't know what exactly it is until they give us the new premium.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
Any other questions for Grace before we address this more fully a little bit? Scott, you look like you got something to say.
No,
Okay.
I don't. Under action items, we'll discuss it more.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Please stick around, Grace. Thank you. Any other community announcements? Always hoping somebody who's called in will pipe up, but it just doesn't happen much. Well, in that case, on to the items on the consent agenda. So we have 3 items. So minutes from special board meeting on the 26th, a check register, and a resolution declaring a certain property surplus. Is there any cause to discuss any of these 3 items from the other board members or from anyone on the line? So I'll admit I was so wrapped up in prepping for the insurance discussion, I did not have a chance to look at the resolution declaring a certain property surplus. I know any discussion can bump this off of the consent agenda and onto an actual action item. If I ask the staff, hey, can you give me a preview? Does that automatically bump it off?
As long as we're not having an extended discussion, no.
Anything noteworthy on?
No. I saw a battery.
No, a lot of these items are IT items, so they're just obsolete or stop taking charges. Most of this was kind of good, but Jason had identified the items.
So nothing that could potentially be of historical significance, just...
No, they're all technology based.
iPhone, iPads, Western Digital backup appliance, Pelco camera, iPhone, Sans digital storage.
I have no follow-up questions then, so. Okay. If nobody else has anything, then do I hear a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
I motion to approve.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. All right, items on the consent agenda taken care of.
Oh, yeah.
Vote. Oh, yeah, vote. Right. All right. Since we're all present, all those in favor of approving the items on the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Items approved. Action items. Okay, right before insurance, we've got adoption of the resolution regarding remote meetings. Scott, you want to refresh all our memories?
Okay, so this is the AB 361 resolution. There is still a declared state of emergency with government recommendations from the state for social distancing. As a result, the board can continue to meet under the AB 361 rules, which allow for a suspension of certain parts of the Brown Act until the emergency is rescinded. In the past, the board has declined to adopt the AB 361 resolution, which is within your discretion. There are areas of the state seeing a resurgence of the latest strain of COVID, so if the board is interested in going back to remote Zoom meetings, you can, but you are not required to.
So do we have any members of the public who want to comment? No. Any discussion from the board? on new thoughts.
So to simplify it, it means that we can zoom in as a board member
So,
within the district or outside the district.
yeah, so under normal Brown Act rules, you're allowed to zoom in at any time. What the
Okay.
Brown Act does require is that the agenda post the location of the directors
Okay.
who are participating remotely. And is for today's agenda, we have the location where Director Ballantyne was going to be participating from.
Mm-hmm.
The other Brown Act rule is that 3 directors have to be physically present within the district's boundaries, not here in the boardroom, but within the district's boundaries.
Okay.
That requirement is suspended as well under AB 361. That's essentially the highlights of what you would see affecting you on a day-to-day basis, meeting-to-meeting basis. Let me say that. So. But zooming, teleconferencing has been around under the Brown Act since the late 90s, early 2000s. So that AB 361 is not new in that regard.
Any other discussion to be had? Any motions to be made? If nobody makes a motion, then it's we keep on keeping on. All right. In that case, moving on. Resolution amending VP 400 as it relates to insurance.
All right.
Take this one.
Yes, ma'am.
Looking forward to it.
Can't wait. So in 2018, February 2018, the board adopted the insurance levels required for tenants of $1 million for each occurrence with a $3 million aggregate. Over the last year, we've looked into this, and the 1.3 is that's a minimum, but that is very difficult to obtain. Some insurance companies don't even offer a 1.3. So with this in mind, and considering a lot of what we have been working under is related to different hangar owners and hangar lessees wanting to sublet their hangar, things of that nature, we've further delved into this. We did a little research, and we found, after talking to 8 different airports in the area, the 7 of the 8 required $1 million in liability insurance with no aggregate, and but they would not allow subletting. So with that in mind, and doing a little more research, talking to our insurance company, what we're proposing is a $2 million each occurrence with no aggregate for those owners and lessees that are wanting to have the ability to sublet their hangar. For those hangar owners and lessees that are not desiring necessarily to have the ability to sublet their hangar, $1 million with no aggregate. And these are for hangars up to and including 10,000 square feet. For hangars greater than 10,000 square feet, the level will be $2 million for each occurrence, $4 million aggregate. Staff recommends approval of the change to board policy 400 as it relates to insurance requirements. Glad to try to answer any questions.
So my first question is, Grace, what you were told from your insurance company, is it broad spectrum? We're only covering people who own their hangars, or is the amounts a factor in that at all? Like, does this solve the problem at all, or is it irrelevant? Okay.
Then kind of the question is, okay, you own a hangar and you have one airplane in it that's yours and one that's another person. Would that person that doesn't own it be subject to their rentals then? It's not the whole hangar, it's any section of the hangar. Is it? Okay. I just, you think the owner is the majority holder of the hangar, and he's got a friend that, hey, can I put your airplane in the hangar? And Okay. Okay.
May I ask a question? I just want to make sure that I'm clear, because we've never had this problem before. So if there's a shift in the insurance industry, I want to make sure that I understand what it is. So we have tenants who lease land. They own the hangar, they lease the land. And then we have tenants who lease the hangar and the land. So if we have a tenant that leases the land and owns the hangar, are they able to get coverage, a general liability policy as a hangar owner? But if they are renting the hangar, they're not able to get renter's insurance for the hangar.
Real quick, Grace, can you just stand at the podium with the mic, just because those on Zoom can't hear?
Thank you for catching that.
Thanks. So yes, the first category is people that own the hangar, lease the land, and then second category is lease the hangar, lease the land. Previously, our insurance group would cover both of that, those people, but now they're saying they can't cover the second. So just the first.
So we've been in discussions with our insurance broker on this issue since it came up. And so this issue is new to me, that renters cannot get the insurance. How did Kim, was it presented to Kim in that way? I don't remember it being broken down between hangar owners and hangar tenants.
Was it proceeded? Oh, Kim, our insurance lady?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
No, it was not. We were just, because insurance requirements are the same whether it's a ground lease or a hangar. So when it was presented to Kim, and our Kim, who we're talking to, is our insurance, she covers our insurance and she does commercial policies. So
I'm going to apologize to the board that I think that we were asking Kim the wrong question, or we weren't asking her all the questions that we have. So can we put this off for a meeting so I can talk with Grace and we can talk with Kim and we can keep, I think it would be helpful, because I just did a commercial tenancy with the 1 and 3 policy and we had no problem getting it. And so I don't know if it's related to airports or if it's related to renters in general, but I would like an opportunity to talk some more with our insurance broker if the board would indulge me. And I apologize that we don't have an answer to that question today.
So I do want a little bit more discussion today, but I appreciate if we need to go find more information, I do want to address if any of our tenants are going to get screwed over in the short term and what we can do as a stopgap while we're continuing to have the conversations. But I know you just said, I want to address something you just said here, which is that there is no problem getting the 1 million and 3. So I have email pulled up here from somebody who rents one of the airport-owned hangars down here, and the email from this individual's insurance company to the individual with their letterhead and all that good stuff said 3 million is not, all caps, normal. You need to push back and tell them, the airport, no, are you renting a hangar to house an airplane in, et cetera, et cetera. But there's an excessive amount of question marks and punctuation here that this insurance company is clearly being thrown off kilter from the whole idea of a 1 versus 3. So I'm on board with the idea that, okay, perhaps we need to have get a little bit more information.
Yeah, because we've had 1 and 3 forever, and we've never had a tenant complain about it.
I'm kind of wondering if perhaps.
And we get certificates of insurance,
Mm-hmm.
and those certificates of insurance show the policy limits.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the 1 and 3 policy limits with the airport as an additional insured. So it's not that tenants have been skating by and not getting the 1 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I would just like to spend a little bit more time with Kim. Kim did tell us that 1 and 3 is phasing out, and now insurance companies are going to 2 and 4.
Okay.
So it may be that company just doesn't offer 1 and 3 anymore, that they're at 2 and 4, and there may be a variety of reasons why it has gone up to 2 and 4. All I know is that for years it's been 1 and 3, and every airline gets a COI from the tenant showing that coverage. So I'm fairly confident that the 1 and 3 is not an outlier.
What you got, Grace?
I just had a question. Could you read back again what the requirements are? I'm sorry, I didn't read the motions and stuff, but
So
1 and 3 has been up until 2018,
No.
and then
In 2018, that's when the 1 and 3 was approved.
okay, and now we're seeing what is the motion to change to 1 and 2 or 2 and 4?
To 1 with no aggregate,
Okay,
or 2 and 4 if you're going to sublease.
That's the
Okay, thanks.
that's if I may.
please.
Sure. The issue that we run into here consistently is with folks that are wanting to sublet their hangars, and I get it. I don't blame them. I would too. And the insurance, the way the insurance requirement was structured, it was forcing that sublettee to go get insurance. Through this process, carrying 2 and 4, the sublettee would not have to, because the primary tenant would already be carrying. They would just have the primary tenant would just add their subleasee as an additionally insured to their policy. That was I was trying to make things simpler.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I don't know, maybe I'm like outing myself, but I looked at our COI and I'm pretty sure it's 1 and 0.
And we were able to bring some stuff to the table that the Air Force doesn't have. In the last 2 years, things have changed significantly with Fox Airfield, and they are not capable of hosting an event. So we were at the ICAS convention, and the event had already secured a team of Thunderbirds for 2023. So we were looking at just essentially moving the venue. There's a whole bunch of backstory to that and other issues that come up, but that was the original WAG, and we were kind of pushing forward with that. In the meantime, we've discovered some different avenues that we would like to explore, and some of that obviously involves this group and the airport's participation. So, like I said, Dennis was going to speak to a lot of that, and unfortunately, he had to sign off. So, at this point, I think what we'd like to do is table it and try to schedule another meeting and, come before you guys. And I'm happy to answer any questions historically or a little bit about, our organization or, who we are. Obviously, we were a community-based organization, nonprofit group. And our group was kind of, we were really lost to COVID. At the last event we tried to put on, COVID stopped our event a week prior to the show happening. And so there were a lot of, financial issues that came out of that. And essentially it bankrupted the organization. So we are looking at a new group and a new start. So that would be kind of where we start from at this point.
So could you break down or just give us an overview of what coordination for an event looks like this? Do you have somebody with some title in charge and different areas underneath? Just walk me through a structure.
Okay, so there's 100 different ways to do it. What we had done in the past is we had a community group that was board-based, and that was our nonprofit organization. That community group, that board, appointed an airshow director, and the airshow director went out and filled the different positions that we needed to fill. There's a lot of key positions, such as an air boss, ground boss type position. The other way that it has been done and that we've worked with is an airport sponsored type setup where the airport goes out and says, hey, we want to put on a show, and we're going to hire a person or group to do that. And essentially what we would do at that point is we would enter into a contract with the airport, and again you provide a management structure for that. And Dennis Dunbar, who is the person that was supposed to be on our Zoom meeting, has been my mentor and a guy that has a impeccable pedigree as far as the air show community is concerned. Dennis has been the president of ICAS, which is the International Council of Air Shows. He's done easily hundreds of shows, if not more, over the years from the West to the East Coast, not just our shows here, but he's the director at Oshkosh. So, probably the biggest event, in the United States. He works obviously very close with all the teams and it's big event kind of stuff. The other person that we work closely with in our group is a gentleman named Ralph Royce, also a board member of ICAS, also a past president. And you couldn't find two finer people. I was very, very lucky when we started the event at Fox that I was able to work with that caliber of people. So to answer your question, there's a couple of different ways of going about it. And for the Mojave event, we really haven't determined what that structure will be. And that's part of what we want to talk to this group about.
Super. So a possibility we'll see the three of you again in a couple of weeks at our next...
So I'm at some USC classes during your next meeting. So we would likely have to push to somewhere in the first part of July.
Okay. So what time in 2023 were we looking at?
Well, we're actually looking at two different time frames. And one of the things that came up, and the thought was we likely could catch one of the teams if we moved back into the early part of the season. Being from the Antelope Valley, I'm not really in favor of putting on a show in the springtime again, but there are advantages to that. And typically when you're dealing with the large teams, they schedule 2 years in advance. So we've missed that window. However, schedule changes occur, and we had some discussions kind of on the side that we could possibly catch one of those teams coming out of their winter training if we moved into, a spring type show. Obviously, the risk there is weather, and that was a risk that we had down at Fox. It was a real problem. Our intent was, in the end, to move the show out of that spring time frame and into a fall. We were going to start an October schedule, which is what the Air Force wanted to do with their open house anyway. So we were just going to start into that October schedule and then flip-flop back and forth between Edwards and Fox. And that would be my preference at this point. However, if we are able to secure a team before that, I think that, we would have to, as a group, look at, moving the show to bring a jet team out.
And jet teams, is that the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds?
Primarily the Blue
Snowbirds, part of that.
Primarily the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds.
Yeah.
Typically, the Snowbirds don't start flying until after that springtime event.
Okay.
So it could be that we could get those guys down here, but not likely if we're going to do an early show.
Okay.
Yeah, so, right, I'm obviously concerned about if we were shooting for early 2023, we're already halfway through 2022. That puts us on, I would imagine, a little bit of a crunch trying to plan something as significant as this, especially since we don't have pre-existing inertia from having done this at Mojave before. I'm not saying I'm not in favor of it, just I'm starting to get a little nervous if we're going to go for an early show versus a later in the year one.
So just, if you got a minute for a story, my first show at the airport with Dennis Dunbar and the guys was a situation where we were coming out of sequestration. The Air Force wasn't doing any of the, neither one of the teams was flying the Blues or the Thunderbirds. And so we had started planning a show for the fall. Dennis Dunbar calls me, and this is, we are getting ready to head out on Thanksgiving, vacation. Dennis calls me and says, hey, he says, would you consider moving the show up to March if we could get the Blue Angels? And I mean, what do you say to that other than, yeah? So we basically hit the ground running with all of the holidays in there right after Thanksgiving and we were still able to put on a show in March. So the people that I'm talking about that would be associated with this, have that level of expertise in standing up a show. Airport issues aside, standing up a show in that time is possible.
All right. No, that helps contextualize it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything else?
That's a show, the inaugural Foxfield show.
That was the inaugural.
They made money, and that's impressive in the industry to make money.
We did, and that was, everything aligned for us. The weather was great. Mm-hmm. We were coming out of sequestration, so everybody was hungry. Nobody had seen the jet teams in a couple of years, and it was a great deal. We also actually were financially solvent through the third show. Mm-hmm. We ended up show 4 and 5 were difficult, and then of course we got into COVID, which just really destroyed us.
Steve, can you give me us and the people calling in just a quick background? Who are you? You sold your team, but I'd just like to know who as well.
I come from on and off. Starting way back when I was very young, in and out of the valley. Dad was an airline pilot, so we moved around a lot. Lived and grew up on a dirt strip out just northwest of Foxfield. Been flying since I was old enough. Well, it was before I was old enough to have a pilot certificate, but and I've just been an aviation enthusiast. I did a stint as a contract corporate pilot, but I did a little over 27 years at Foxfield as the airfield manager down there. So done some other things here and there, but generally my background is in airport management.
Okay, and then another question. Typical attendance at Fox has been what?
So the actual numbers for year 1 and 2, we did about 80,000 people, and that was over the 2-day event. The number that was published was a little bit higher than that, but it really was, when the dollars and cents were counted, it was about 80,000 people. What was it? It was the first bad weather year we had. And I want to say that was year 4 or 5. That went down to about 65,000. And that was where we stayed the following year as well.
And then one more question, please. The event scheduled and canceled because of COVID, how deep was Fox into this?
So the airport itself
recoverable, like you said, it was kind of a bankrupting event.
Right.
How much was that you couldn't get? You'd already committed monies to or something.
Right. So the airport actually had no financial interest in the show. The show was entirely community based as far as donations and so on and so forth. So the airport. The loss that the airport saw, because we had some upfront money in getting things organized and getting certain pieces of equipment and so on and so forth, was in the neighborhood of about $130,000. The organizers, we saw about a $500,000 loss over the 2 years. Yeah, and when you're dealing with a nonprofit, we only being a fairly young organization, we hadn't really had time to build that war chest up significantly. So, in retrospect, and the board, we toiled over it for quite some time, but the board decided to move forward even with, the possibility of COVID, because, not only we were invested at that point, but, we had some obligations to some of our partners here locally. So, it was just one of those gut-wrenching decisions. We were actually on a phone call with Barbara Ferrer, the doctor down in Los Angeles County that is their public health person. We were on that phone call with the likes of Disneyland and the Lakers and the Dodgers and so on and so forth. And they were basically telling us a week prior that they were going to, start to enact a bunch of the COVID restrictions, and that meant we were not having a show. So a week prior to the show, we had to make the call that we were not having the show. And, as you can imagine, with all of our folks that were supporting us, our tent people and all of the different vendors that we had already contracted and paid, we didn't see much of that money come back.
Thanks. I know we're all pretty enthused about something like this.
We're really excited, and Dennis and I have had some conversations about, Mojave and the airspace that surrounds Mojave offers us some unique possibilities that haven't been done at a show before. And, I was hoping that, he would be able to speak to it, but we are very excited about what we can do here.
Certainly can't wait to hear more. Are there any other questions from the board?
No, just remarks that obviously ground parking is a major thing for any air show. And figure out a plan to get a lot of cars parked there.
Yeah, so
that's the biggest hurdle I feel it shows.
In my current life, I'm working for the Air Force, and I work up at Plant 42 in airfield management. And somehow they suckered me into working the Edwards Air Show. And that's currently what we're going through right now is just security forces is, told us, no, we have to do things a certain way as far as ingress and egress to the base and where we're going to park people. We have a parking consultant that we've paid quite a bit of money to, and we're just going to ignore everything he's told us and do it the way security forces wants it done. So it's coming together. And, our fear, at least from the air show committee side, is that we would end up with a situation like we had for the 2009 Edwards Air Show, where we had folks parked on the 14 freeway 3 or 4 miles from the Edwards exit or from the Rosemond exit. So, we're still actively engaged and we're trying to come up with a solution to the problems, but it is a different animal having to deal with the security forces and the folks that, have an interest in securing Edwards Air Force Base. So this would be simpler in a lot of respects.
Any comments, questions from members of the public? No? All right, well, look forward to hearing more detail.
We'll get back and, we'll get something scheduled. We'll make sure those guys actually stay on. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
And is that all you had for us today?
That concludes my report. One thing I would like to add, that was not on my list, is the Kern County Economic Development Corporation has a board member opening, and that opening was held by Mr. Deaver, and it is for the Mojave Air and Spaceport Special District. If any of you would like to become involved in that, let me know. I would like to put you in touch with Mr. Chapman.
Well, thank you for the information.
Thank you.
Okay, so that does it for our reports. We don't have any standing board committees, and I don't think we have a need for a new one at this time. Board of Directors, any comment on items not on the agenda? Jim never was able to join us. Okay. I don't have anything. So public comment for items not on the agenda. Okay, I guess that's it for open session. So we'll be moving into closed session. So for those who want, please stick around for the closed session report.
Thank you, ma'am. Chuck's not sticking around for the closed session report.